Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. We invite coaches, athletes, and industry leaders in our community who are willing to open up about their setbacks and successes to educate and inspire our listeners. We're your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and on today's episode, we are interviewing Michele Letendre. Michele has been one of the most consistent athletes over the years at the CrossFit Games, having competed 6 times as an individual, finishing 4th place back in 2014. She made a seamless transition into the coaching world, now coaching some of the top individual competitors there is in the world, and recently unveiling her new DECA comp, which is a way for athletes not only at the top tier level, but also some of those mid-tier and new individuals looking to compete, gives them a way to access some of the best coaching there is out there. She is an incredible person, one of the most self-aware athletes I've ever met. She's one of the co-owners of DECA Gym up in the Montreal area. Chad and I have been lucky enough to go up to DECA Gym and do some seminars over the course of the last few years. It's an incredible gym, incredible community up there, and Michele does a great job not only with her high-level competitors, basically everyone that is part of that community. We're really excited to have Michele on, and we really hope to have her back because I really think that the things that she's kind of passing along to not only her competitors and the people that she works with, but also that she talks about here go a long way for the people that are in their gyms on a daily basis and hopefully get you to be a better athlete every single day. Enjoy this one with Michele. Well, hello, Michele. It's so good to see you. We were just talking briefly off the air that the last time we saw you was actually, I don't even know how many years ago, but when Chad and I came up to Montreal and did a clinic at DECA. So it's been a while since we saw you.
I think that clinic was probably around 2017. So yeah, it's been a little while. It's really nice to see you guys. Tink you for having me.
Yeah, I'll just say that I can remember that was the coldest I've been since we just had our weather here in Texas. I don't know if you guys saw that, but we were frozen in here for a couple of days. But I think you guys were laughing at me, Michele, because I brought like one small, like little Power Monkey jacket, and that's all I had, and it was pretty cold.
Yeah, from my memory, I think you guys came in February, which is usually a pretty cold time of year up here. But this year it's been really climate, like it's been really nice.
Yeah, all the cold weather's gone to Texas this winter.
Yeah,
that's right.
I heard. Yeah, is it getting a little bit better or?
Yeah, it really kind of just went from one extreme to not the complete other extreme, but one day it was below freezing and the next day it was up like mid 60s and then 70s the next day. And so like everything melted and everything got green again real quick, like nothing had happened, but it was bizarre. Something we're not used to down here.
We're used to it.
Yeah.
Well, how are things up in Montreal? How are things going right now with the gym and just with you guys in general with training?
I mean, the gym has been closed since October, so it's
fully closed.
It's rough, fully closed.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've in Quebec, our measures are pretty strict. I mean, we had a first closure and then we reopened over the summer, and then in the fall we had to close, and then we've been closed since. I mean, like, we're doing what we can. I can't say that it's been fantastic. We're not the kind of gym that wants to shift to online services. Our team really loves community and on-site coaching. So we're just kind of holding on right now and waiting for the government to give us the green light. So, I mean, all things considered, like, my staff is healthy, I'm healthy, the co-owner everyone is doing well. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. And we're going around, we're moving forward with that. Like, we have no choice, but I mean, training wise, I'm not doing very much other than just I signed up for my first Ironman triathlon that I'm supposed to do this summer.
Nice.
Yeah. Hopefully that goes through because it's a lot of time training, and DECA Comp is doing really well. We have a lot of athletes eager to start competing again. And, so everything is moving forward. 2021 was a nice little bit of fresh air. Hopefully it'll keep getting better as we move forward,
Well, with you signing up for your first triathlon, is that just, first, what distance is it?
It's a full Ironman.
Wow. All right. So have you done triathlons prior?
Never.
I love it. Well, you come from swimming and water polo background, so you're comfortable in the water and everything. So that part is no brainer. But is it just kind of your competitive instincts kicking back in again that you haven't competed in a while, or what? You want a new challenge?
I have to say that so I was like the competition is like slowly kind of dying, the desire to be in actual competition, but the competitiveness of working out and training for something was still kind of there. And I'm pretty self-motivated, so like I was always kind of working out. I had gotten, like, last year, with the stress of the games and a bunch of different things, I started running to kind of try and do different things and just going into the gym and working out. I mean, gym owners out there must know what it's like when you own a gym and your pastime is the gym and everything is kind of mixed up. So I just started running a little bit more, and then I got really involved with long distance running, and I did some half marathons, and I really enjoyed it. Not organized, but just like myself, and I really enjoyed it. And then with COVID, everyone started getting into different activities that were a little bit easier to get access to, like cycling. My boyfriend is one of those people, and then Fred started cycling, and I was watching Fred, who normally is a very indoorsy person, very like traditional training stuff. He was starting to go outdoors and he was starting to get into more running. And I was like, man, watching him like enjoy something new was really intriguing. So I got in it with it. I got in it with him. So I started cycling, like road biking, and I fell in love with it. And then talking to one of my head coaches at the gym and in Deca Comp, he was really getting interested in signing up for a triathlon. And I said, I've always wanted to do a triathlon. Like, I've done one at the CrossFit Games, like a weird triathlon-ish style event in 2012, but I wanted to test the waters, and I figured it would be a good incentive to keep me moving and do something. And I was playing around with the idea of doing the half Ironman, but I figured I don't want to do, maybe I'll do a half and then next year I'll do a full, because that's like a 2-year investment. So I said, if I don't like it, it'll be a 1-year investment. And then I'll choose if I want to continue. But so far, I mean, like, the goal is to participate and to finish it. That's my goal. So it's been great. I mean, and then considering the COVID thing and the stress around CrossFit gyms, having the Ironman there for me to compete in individually, completely aside from the whole COVID situation, I think it was a saving grace a little bit for me personally, on a personal level.
Yeah, and on a mental level, I'm sure too, right? Just to give you something to kind of strive for, not have to worry about what's going on in the gym, just a little extra thing for you to be able to do on your own. Well, that's quite a thing to take on, that, considering that you've never done one before. Full Ironman is no joke. When is it exactly, and where are you doing it?
We're doing it. I'm doing it in Tremblant. Well, I'm saying we because it's me and my head coach that have signed up. We're doing it in Tremblant in August this summer.
All right. Well, good luck with that. We'll be following along to see how it all goes for you.
Yeah, I'll document it as I go. It'll be a 17-hour thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little about your coaching style and you as a coach, because I think it's one of the things that I think both Chad and I noticed whenever we have been with you in the past. And one, you're pretty intense when it comes to coaching. You're very much kind of in there with the athletes. You know what it takes from a competitive side of things. But now transitioning into the coaching world, you're taking on a role that has predominantly been male dominated, right? You're one of the only females that is actually coaching high-level CrossFit athletes. And I was just kind of curious if that was kind of what you intended to happen when you finished your competitive career, and if you notice anything, being a female, being a coach, that might be something that you're having to kind of overcome.
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, being one of the only female high-level coaches, I often get asked that question. And I can't say that I know the difference between being a male coach and a female coach, because I've only ever been a woman. So that's the reality that I have. But I have to say, I think it's hard because I think emotionally, it's maybe a little bit more difficult. You know, you do get emotionally involved with your athletes, and like, I've been very invested in them. To be fair, I've never really seen my gender as a limitation for anything I've ever done in my life, whether it's been an athlete or the people I've looked up to. And I mean, like, as I grow older, I start to realize that there are certain people that I look up to that are there because they're women and they're leaders in their fields. But I mean, when I was playing water polo, I was looking at the men's field just as much as the women's field. And when I started doing CrossFit, I was looking up to the men just as much as the women. And it was one of the only sports, though, that I did recognize how close the women were, athletically speaking, performance-wise, how they looked, how they moved. It just felt like the women were on par with the men. You know, in water polo, women, it's not the same game as men. It's a little bit more defensive. It's a little bit more strategic. It's not as fast. You know, those are realities of women water polo versus men. I can't speak for our sports, but CrossFit was one of the few sports that I could see that women were really on par, even though there are very obvious differences in performance. But it was very nice to see that. For me personally, as a coach, if I wanted to become the coach that I am today, no, it wasn't in my vision, but in the nature of the way I am, I want to be the best I can possibly be in everything that I do. And for me, having been in the shoes of being an athlete and having had different relationships with different coaches, I came to understand what I appreciated the most out of a coach. And I said to myself, that's what I was going to do for my athletes. So I think that's the biggest key here. And not only am I a woman that is unique, maybe, but I don't feel like it's unique because I've seen high-level female coaches. But the fact that I've been in their shoes changes our relationship quite a bit. The emotional stress and athletes' reactions to hardships and difficulties, I get it. And how that translates in training. You know, sometimes people don't realize how our emotions translate into our training results and stuff like that. And so when you've been in those shoes and you know that, oh, I just had a bad day, and you start to try and understand why you've had a bad day, then it kind of helps you navigate the situation a little bit better with your athletes, you know? So yeah. I think that's the biggest thing.
So I want to get your take on this, Chad, too, because this is such a huge point for me and something that we talk about a lot with Power Monkey, this idea of Power Monkey being a collection of former elite athletes that have transitioned to coaching in the same way that you have, true, right? Yeah. And what we kind of think is that, one, being an elite athlete does not mean at all that you're going to become a good coach, right? There are a ton of great athletes that transition to coaching that are poor coaches, especially people that things come naturally to, right? If you're an athlete where things just you pick up without having to really understand the methodology and the steps that it takes to get there, it's difficult to then pass that on to the next person that you work with, as opposed to someone that kind of works through things step by step. It becomes a little bit more analytical, and you can kind of pass along those steps to the person that you're working with. Now, Chad, I want to get your take on it too, because I think you believe the same thing, that if you find a combination of a coach that was a great athlete, you get something special in that coach, because they can pass along things that a coach that wasn't an elite athlete, you know, didn't have from an experience perspective. But Chad, what are your thoughts on that in terms of having a coach that was an elite athlete versus one that wasn't?
Yeah, it's very much the same. And I always hesitate a little bit to say this out loud, but I believe it very strongly that if you have that combination of someone that, was an elite athlete, has that experience, has that knowledge, is talented as a teacher, is talented as a coach, they can communicate effectively, they have empathy, everything else, like that combination, in my opinion, I don't see how it can be beat. But at the same time, I don't want, any coaches out there that, didn't reach an elite level to think that they can't be an incredible or an even better coach than than one of us, because there is a lot of value in someone that has done Olympic lifting, say, for 20 or 30 or 40 years, whether they reach the elite level or not. They were in there in the trenches and and training and trying to be the best that they could be as well. But there's just a little bit of something different, a little bit of extra experience and knowledge that they don't get, competing on an international level, in an elite level, in many ways, that I think does provide that advantage for those that that have that specific combination. And I wonder, as you were talking, Michele, do you feel like that is your greatest advantage as a coach, those things that you were listing off? Or do you think that, are you a very technical coach, or is your strong suit programming? What is that?
One of the things that I think that have made me an elite level athlete, but also a strong coach, is my willing to understand and like almost philosophize what I'm doing. So when I was competing in CrossFit, I was very lucky because in reality, like I had a lot of talent. Like I learned movement very quickly, but I was also obsessed about understanding the movement I was trying to do. Mm-hmm. I loved practice. When I played water polo, I preferred practice over competition. I arrived 30 minutes, 40 minutes earlier before practice started as a group to work on my wrist shots and my long shots against the wall. So the obsession with practice is probably something that has allowed me to excel, technically speaking, as an athlete, but it's also something that as a coach, I can recognize the character of an athlete if they're willing to do things like that and see that as being something that is intangible and that can, like, I can work with an athlete that does that a lot better than someone who's, let's say, is very talented. Another thing that I've always felt like made me a better coach, not so much an athlete, but I have an art background and I have a deep desire to understand profound thoughts and ideas and express them in a way. Like, I'm creative. I like to express myself in different ways, but I also like to think and I also love to learn. So I guess as a coach, that translates into someone that's very willing to expose myself to different ideas and try them out. So when it comes to coaching, yes, I'm very technical because that's what got me where I am. As a smaller athlete in Olympic weightlifting, I used to rank one of the highest in the sport because I was so technically sound. But then again, being only technical gives it doesn't give. One of the things you said, Chad, was being an elite level athlete provides an extra added experience that other coaches who are at that level, and that what that elite level experience is managing pressure at its highest degree. And managing pressure, if you don't know how some people emotionally spill out and you don't understand what that looks like, then as a coach you might say, oh my God, that's a problem athlete, or that's this or that's that. But if you've been through it and you've recognized those situations, then you can navigate that better, and then that causes a much stronger relationship with the athlete. So yeah, I mean, like, I agree with you, Chad, but I think in everything you said, the biggest point is empathy. It's like you have, and part of being empathetic or having empathy as a coach is letting yourself getting exposed to what you're giving your athletes, whether it's competition at whatever level, and whether it's training at whatever level, or etc. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that one of the things you mentioned that was different with female coaches, that I think you feel, is that you guys tend to get a little bit closer to your athletes. So that relationship, I noticed that with my wife, she's able to do that immediately and on a much deeper level naturally than I am, so it's an area that I struggle with and that I have to work to keep up with her on. And there's no way that I'll ever keep up with that because she's so invested. And that's one of the strengths that I feel is on that side, or that is more likely to come from a female coach. And man, you guys, in that sense, with that as part of the combination can make super coaches for sure. And I wonder also, when you mentioned, Michele, that you worked with a number of different coaches in your career and you really thought about that and pulled out what you liked most about all of them. And you said, that's the way I want to be for my athletes. Can you share with us some of those things that were most important to you?
Yeah. So I was a very expressive athlete. I was very good at complaining. I was very honest with how I felt. I was never one of those suck it up buttercup kind of people. And like, I wasn't like that. So in that sense, I would say I would consider myself a very realistic person, like athlete. But one of the things that I had seen, and one of the reasons, I guess one of the qualities that made me feel like really powerful in a coaching athlete relationship was when my coach was just interested in who I am. Like when my coach asked me how I'm doing, how's everything, like not just like, hey, how's training, like really like what's going on, how's Fred, what's going on in your life, and that helps dissipate a lot of stress, so coaches are really, they're there, programming, but if I can take away any kind of emotional pressure that my athletes are feeling, then that to me is a win. And that's where I felt the best as an athlete, is when my coach really cared about who I was and cared about how I felt, and was also, and some of the best relationships were the ones that once they gain that trust, they would tell me straight up, like, no, and weren't afraid to people are like, some coaches were very afraid with me to address, like, how do you say that word, when you not argue, but
almost like telling you what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear.
Yeah, but also kind of discourse. Like, I've always been very open and honest about my opinions. Like, I've always been very opinionated, and I've always been vocal about it. And coaches that didn't take that personally, but took it as debate. That's the word I was looking for. Like, that was open to debate and understanding why I would feel a certain way. So when I talk to my athletes and they tell me, why should I do this or what, and I'm thinking specifically of Pat, because Pat and I are very much alike. Pat will always tell me when he feels like something isn't right, or he's trying to understand something and we're kind of butting heads. But at first it was hard not to take it personally, but when you have healthy debate, both people grow from that. So that's something that I felt like with other coaches I didn't have. And then when I recognized that, I said to myself, I would always have healthy conversations with my athletes and explain my point, but I never want my athletes to feel like, well, if I'm overstepping my boundaries, that they would be too scared to tell me, like they have to tell me. So
there's a trust component there, right? There's a trust. You're talking about the empathy. It's a lot about dealing with the individual. It's not a blanket coaching style for every single person, right? Exactly. And so, and I think that works when you have smaller groups or when you have a team where you're working with people on a regular basis in person. But I'm curious right now, you mentioned Pat. I don't know if you're seeing Pat regularly in person and training with him the way things are right now, but you seem to have some athletes that are kind of scattered around the world. You work with some remote. Do you feel like it's a little bit more challenging to be able to give that individualistic approach and really check in with people on how they're doing on a regular basis, being that you're not there in person? Do you feel like that's kind of an added challenge that you're having to overcome?
No, I like working remotely in that sense. So Pat and I live on opposite ends of the country, so we never see each other. But we talk to each other every single day. I mean, Pat and I are also really close friends. Like, I coach him and I program for him and everything, but we're very close friends. So to me, it's not very difficult. I have Josh in Dubai. I have Mike in Ireland. I have a guy, Nick, in California. Ellie's in Australia. And when I start working with people, I tell them that, I have a lot of things going on over here. So everyone is responsible for getting in touch with everybody. Like, I get in touch on a regular basis, but if it's not enough for them, they need to get in touch with me. So from the bat, there's an expectation that's set that like we're remote, you know. I am not going to check on you every single day. But I tell them straight up, if there's something that's off or something that needs to be changed or something up, then you have to tell me because I'm not there to see it. So there's when you're working remotely, and some athletes do really well with that. Like after having seen a lot of coaches, I realized that personally, I didn't need a coach with me every day. I would have gone crazy. So lucky for me, the athletes that I have are all quite independent. And when they have questions, they ask. When I want videos, I ask. And then sometimes I'll just kind of, excuse my language, but I'll shoot the shit with them. But lucky for me, my athletes are quite independent. I get the most dependent one is Pat. But it's to me, it's not too hard to navigate, just because I warn everybody beforehand that I'm not going to check in on you every single moment of the day, and I'm not expecting you to do the same with me, but that I'm always available, and your responsibility as an athlete is to contact me if something is up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious because I mean, I'm looking at it from my perspective as an athlete. You know, I felt like my coach could almost read my mind. Like we got to a point in terms of trust, in terms of him knowing when to push, when to back off, the right things to say, even when I didn't want to hear them, came from our time together. And like from me being able to walk in the gym, him saying, we're going to adjust the training plan today because I can see in your eye that you didn't sleep well or that you have something else on your mind. And it seems like the people that you've recruited as athletes have a particular mindset to be able to do this remotely, where they're independent enough to say, I'm going to get the training plan done. I can trust Michele to check in on me when I need to, and vice versa. But do you feel like it's a particular type of athlete that works well like this, or it can be anyone?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends. Like you have to know. Like I knew that having a coach on site would be beneficial once or twice a year, like when I was competing, and then sometimes a little bit more. And I'm, like I said, I'm very independent. So after a week of training, like I'm going to take Ben as an example, because that was like the most often I went to see a coach because he was pretty close to me. So I drove down to Natick regularly. But after a week or two, I wanted to get out of there and do my own thing, you know? So yeah, and I think that there are a lot of athletes out there that are smart enough and independent enough and disciplined enough to do what is expected of them. And to be fair, like if you're not, I don't know if I'm the right coach for you. Mm-hmm. You know, I expect athletes to want to learn. Like athletes should be doing what they need to do to get to where they are. I'm not going to push someone to do that. That's not my job. I'm going to navigate people with the drive to go where they want to go, but it's not my job as a coach to tell you, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should know. And then there are certain days where I'm going to be pulling a little bit more than others. But yeah, I don't think that there would be too much benefit depending, because the athletes that come to me are often older athletes. So I think they've kind of experienced a little bit more and know what they want. And they can kind of see that as like, I know what I need to do. But I've always encouraged my athlete, like when I was competing, I had my CrossFit coach, but because I was obsessed about learning technique, I had a agility coach and I had a Olympic lifting coach that I went to see in person, that the only thing that they would do to me was to practice technical stuff. So it was like in-person coaching that I sought out. I'll never be able to do that. So I always encourage the athletes, any athlete, whether you're being coached by someone one-on-one or you're following a blog style programming, those are the things that, like, in the reality of our sport, like you have to surround yourself with specialists if you want to go in the general sport of CrossFit and do really well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chad, I think that I'm gonna let you speak here, but it just seems to fall very much in line with the way that you've coached yourself over the years, right? Like You were absolutely that self-motivated athlete and the person who didn't need to be kind of pushed. Is that right? Like you basically did all your own programming, you did everything on your own. Did you ever have a regular person that was kind of there on a regular basis with you while you were training?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was just thinking. I was loving what Michelle was saying about independence and kind of the way that she defined that and everything else. But, I never had someone that was there every single day. The most frequent was probably, maybe 3 or 4 days a week, but that was only through the course of like, I think a year when I lived near the guy that's Richard Fleming, who's been an acquaintance of mine ever since I started, took me under his wing and he got me started and kept me going and really was a part of coaching me throughout my entire career. But, that was mostly from afar. And especially once I started writing my programming, this was over 20 years ago now, only a couple years into training, he was there for me to reach out and ask questions if I had any questions, like you said, Michelle, and to give me recommendations or, to tell me that I was, or try to tell me when I was messing up or whatever else it may be, or, actually write a little bit of programming for me for a couple months if I just wasn't confident in what I was doing and felt like I needed it. So yeah, very, very independent. And I wonder, Michelle, if the word recruit, which Dave said earlier, was the correct word to use. Have you actually recruited these people, or have they been the ones that have just gravitated towards you? And on the other side of that, if an athlete came to you, an elite athlete that is not necessarily like that, would you be willing to take them on, or would you just in the beginning,
Yeah.
say it's probably not going to work out?
Yeah. So no, I don't recruit athletes. The athletes have all sought me out, and I've refused people before if I felt like it wasn't going to be a good fit. But most of the time, the reason is because I just don't have time. Like there's a lot of people that have recruited me, and it's just the timing was terrible, and I just like I have my hands in so many things that I didn't want to risk being responsible for any frustrations on the part of the athletes. But it has happened when I've refused or ended relationships because either the values didn't kind of line up, or the I felt like it could be like a relationship problem.
hmm Yeah, for me, I just feel like a coach is not best suited to be someone's babysitter. Like you said, you're not going to be willing to reach out to them every single day and make sure that they're doing exactly what they need to do. They need to have some self-discipline, self-motivation. They need to take care of all those little basic things on their own. And I wonder, Michelle, do you think that an athlete can reach the highest level if they don't have a certain level of independence? And what is that level? Will an athlete that has to be babysat every single day, with almost everything that they do, be able to make it to the highest level?
Um, I don't think I can. There's no like I've always felt like anyone can do anything if they surround themselves the way they need to, and and so if someone does need babysitting every day and they seek out that kind of relationship, then they're putting themselves in the best possible situation to reach the highest possible level they can. And so that's good. If an athlete is very independent and doing everything on their own and has that kind of discipline and can live with that kind of pressure put on their shoulders, and that's what it takes for them to move forward, then that's the right answer. So really the importance is to try, and to experience, to know what to try, what to experience. You have to navigate through that experience with as much self-awareness and self-analysis as you possibly can. um, I sincerely thought when I sought out my last coach that I would benefit greatly from having a really tight one-on-one approach, and I quickly realized that it put way too much pressure on me, and I felt like I couldn't be myself. So then that's when I realized what level of independence that I personally needed. But I had to try that out, and I had to, um, I'm so fortunate, and any high level athlete, like if we're fortunate to have a partner in your life or a friend that you can talk to and really express what you need, and you can get some talk to someone to advise you, that's key. Because like Fred is my boyfriend, but in reality he was my coach throughout my entire career, and every single move that I did to compete or even to coach or in my business now, I talk to him and he advises me on a regular basis. And so he helped me make the right decisions, and he also helped me feel like no matter what decision I made or took, that I'll be able to bounce back and adapt. So it never felt like there was any serious consequences to any decisions. And I think aside from independence, that's another key thing that athletes need to have, is that I don't like saying fear of failure, because I feel like it's so cliche now, and I feel like people don't even know what failure is anymore. But the fear of consequence on your journey can really cripple you from making a decision. So if you don't feel that fear, then you kind of go into every decision kind of like very honestly and very innocently. And if you're willing to accept that you have to adapt if it doesn't go through, then you move on, so that level of trust in yourself needs to be very high.
Yeah, clearing your mind as much as you can from, I like to call it freedom from the end result. I have a
Yeah.
goal. I know, I believe that it's possible, but I also know that other things are possible. And I think, if you recognize that and you accept, whatever the end result may be, you create freedom from that end result, and it allows you
Mm-hmm.
to experience, like you're talking about, and really put your best foot forward as you train and make those little decisions that have to be made on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Chad, I love that. After all these years, first time I've heard you actually say that out loud.
Oh,
Freedom
really?
from the end
Okay.
result. We got to have that written down somewhere. That's a
Oh,
really.
man. That,
But what do you do? What do you do if the athlete that you're coaching, or yourself, is someone that is very clearly motivated by the end result? Because is that wrong? Is that wrong? Like, I feel I'm a process driven person. I prefer exploration to end results. Okay, that's what I've come to terms with this year, that this is how I am motivated. I love exploring. Results are not important. They need to be there, because otherwise I wouldn't explore, but I love to explore. So what do you do being process driven when you have people that are results driven?
Mm-hmm.
that's
It's
a
very
good,
hard to
yeah,
uh,
it's a good question. And I think, whatever works in that regard for certain athletes, you kind of have to let it be. So if I was working with an athlete and they were succeeding with that mindset, with being very driven by that end result and saying, I have this goal of lifting this amount of weight or winning the gold medal, whatever it may be, and they're just always focused on that, and they don't lose sight
mhm,
of it, and they perform well, if it ain't broke, then I'm not going to try to fix it. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that usually, at least at some point, sets them up for disappointment that's going to affect them in a negative way. And so, okay, you get to this point, you're accomplishing what you want, but if it ever comes to the point to where that's starting to drag you down, then maybe we need to have a talk and try to, you know, reevaluate or change your perspective a little bit, the way that you see things, the way
mhm,
that you think about things, at least a little bit, so that you can continue to produce positively.
mhm. One of the things that I've struggled with is, um, as a coach, is that I've seen athletes that have had immense success, that are results driven, immense success, but that are constantly unsatisfied, and as a person, they're unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that a lot. That's where I struggle very much, because I know what that short-term goal feels like. There's nothing that can stop you from wanting that. It's like a drug. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the reason you do things. All your decisions will be made for that, and that's the kind of drive that we would expect from elite level athletes. Some elite level athletes are very good at compartmentalizing their emotions, and others aren't, and it translates to their lives. So I've seen athletes that I've had immense investment potential, but I've seen them become unhappy people, and it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
coach people to get them where they want. and to realize that no matter what you do, even if they do achieve their goal, it's never going to be enough, and they're always going to be unhappy. So I feel like sometimes at that point, I'm never sure if I should indulge in that, or if I should kind of try and help them see what other things are going on and help them develop as a person, you know?
Yeah,
I wonder if you can change that in someone, right? Because I think all of us here are more of the process-driven approach. Because, you know, I love being in the gym too. I love training more than I like competing. I love the grind, right? I love going in every day and staying till the lights were turned off. And that's the kind of process that I enjoy. But can you change? Do you think that it's possible to change that in someone who is results driven and saying, you know, this might have some detrimental effects in terms of long term, in terms of how you are as a person? Let's try this different approach. Do you think that that's just innate in someone, or you think that's something that can be changed?
It's hard to say that to them in the moment when they're still succeeding with that mindset. It's hard to try to,
but it's not sustainable, right? Because you're not going to win everything. There will be those points of failure, and what happens then? You just break down.
Yeah, but absolutely, you see it coming. So when is the best time to say that? Should that be in the very beginning, up front, in some way? You're able to explain that to them without kind of taking the wind out of their sails. Or my probably ultimate recommendation along those lines, guys, would just have them watch the movie Cool Runnings. I'm sure you guys have seen that. So
I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah. So there's one of the guy or the coach in there says at some point, I may not quote this exactly, but he says something like, if you're not good enough with the gold medal, you'll never be good enough without it. So, you know, hopefully if they are watching that movie, they can hear that statement, and maybe that can change their perspective a little bit. But
there's John Candy, another great Canadian.
John Candy. That's absolutely right. And the thing is, Dave, is that can you change that? Well, if you don't try to change that, and if you can't change that, I just believe with everyone, it's going to be changed the hard way, you know, on its own at some point.
Yeah, I feel with you on that, Chad. I think it's kind of like, I use this analogy a lot. It's kind of like a smoker. Change comes from when the smoker is ready to stop. When the smoker is ready to stop, he's going to stop. He or she is going to stop. But you can't force someone to stop smoking. So I think you're right. I think it is the hard way, because as a coach, you care and you don't want to see someone hit the wall. But sometimes the best possible thing that can happen to someone is hitting the wall.
Right.
And if that person is willing enough to be happy and to do the work and to kind of make decisions for their long-term health and not their short-term health, and they're going to do that. So hopefully athletes and I've always felt like the best psychologist is sport. Sport to me is like a magnifying glass on the person, you know, like there, like everything comes out of sport, like positive, but also a lot of really negative things about the human being come out in sport as well. And it's like, what a great way to do therapy without paying for therapy.
Absolutely. And you know, you really learn who you are. Not only learn who you are, but you're able to change and become a better person through sport, and take that into the rest of your life. And speaking of psychologist, as a coach, how much of a psychologist do you think you have to be, Michele?
That's a really good question. I don't think so. I think that you have to understand the basics of human relations. Some people have that very naturally and others don't. I think the most important thing is listening. And like the best therapists out there are the ones that listen to you and that help you find the right answers. So I think as a coach, listening to what the athlete is saying, and I know this, the athletes sometimes not saying what they actually mean. But if you're good as a coach and you can listen to what they're saying and understand the context in which they're saying it, then you can get more out of coaching. But it is for some, it's not like for some, I mean, like Patrick is very cerebral and like he takes things for what it is. And like with Pat, what you see is what you get. But I've had some people where I felt like I was out of my reach to kind of help them move forward. So in that case, you know, not knowing that I didn't have that kind of capacity to help them, then my job was to make sure to tell them like you need help. Like, so yes, I mean, you need to be able to recognize red flags. You need to be able to recognize when a situation is out of your capacity. But really, like, psychologists, really, I don't know, more like a really good listener.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So, it sounds like to be the best coach you can be, we're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, you got to be an elite athlete. You got to have a physical therapy degree. You got to have a psychology degree, all these things. But, one of the things you said earlier, Michele, you said that you recommended to some of your athletes that they go out and work with other specific coaches, like weightlifting coaches or gymnastics coaches. And I love that. And it's, I wouldn't have guessed that that would have been a part of the game when I first came into CrossFit. I mean, it makes sense looking back on it now, but have you ever come across any coaches in your career that were against that? Maybe their ego wouldn't allow you or other athletes to go out and work with any of these types of people.
I've had a bad experience with a coach that, not in that way, like that specific coach was fine with me working technically, like, he told me what to do with them, like no loading, no this and that. But I have had coaches that overstepped what their knowledge base was, and provided me with really terrible advice. But so that's where the independence in me would be like, well, if a coach had told me like, no, like, I don't want you to work with an Olympic lifting coach, I would have said like, that's stupid. Like why wouldn't I do that? Like, there were some times where I had I expressed to my coach, I feel like I need to do this because it's a really big weakness. And this person's answer was, just follow the plan. I was like, okay, moving on. Like, that kind of advice, like that's where, if you can't have an open dialogue with your coach, and when you're literally saying, I need help because I feel unprepared, and that person is saying, don't worry about it, it's weird. That's weird, And so, no, I've had really bad advice, but I've never had anyone straight up tell me like, no, don't go see a specialist or anything like that. In fact, to be fair, most of the coaches I've had were very, very happy about it, because I want, like, the good coaches know, like, well, I'm limited in my capacities, so if there are coaches out there listening and you've told your athletes not to go see a specialist, I would strongly recommend that you change your mind, because that your athlete is trying to get better and you're their coach.
Yeah, and there's too many things to be good at in CrossFit. You're not expert at everything. I mean, no one can expect to be that. So being open to understanding that.
You learn so much. You learn so much. Like, when I was training in Olympic weightlifting during my CrossFit competition, I had two different coaches, but you learn so much about different training systems and sports, it's so much fun. Like, even now I'm doing triathlon, and I've registered for a triathlon club that provides me with programming and resources, and it's making me such a better coach. It's helping me understand a completely different way of training that I don't think I would have ever included if I had not done that. So I think that if, as a coach, to be a really good coach, you have to expose yourself to practices, but you physically can't, then the next best thing is to say, well, this person has done that, therefore you should work with this person. And I think that any coach who would see that as a threat in CrossFit, like, wow, like in CrossFit, like, we do everything.
Right.
Like, no freaking way can you do everything.
Right. And, that situation can be tricky, though. Dave and I have been a part of, writing programming for a couple athletes together, along with someone else that was doing their CrossFit programming. And I think the big thing is that, Dave, tell me if you agree or not, but that I feel like is the way that it should be done is not, 5 different cooks writing programming for this individual, but one main programmer that understands this athlete is working with a gymnast, is also working with a weightlifter, an endurance coach, or however many other coaches that they're working with. But their job as the main programmer is to oversee everything and make sure that they're not being overwhelmed in any one direction, that they're balanced in their training and their programming as much as they can be with all those other things going on. Because I think when you try to mix programming from too many different people, I think that's probably where athletes and coaches go wrong with that. Would you agree?
And I think
Dave?
I do 100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you need a head coach, right? You need someone that kind of oversees the entire plan, and then you need some accessory work as needed. And that's why I think, Michele, what your comment was about, if an athlete speaks up and says, I'm having issues in a particular area, but that head coach says, just follow the plan, they're missing out on being able to address the problem accordingly. So that's why the communication is as important as someone overseeing a plan. I think it kind of goes both ways.
I think a lot of responsibility in a situation like that falls on the athlete. And you're right, like the head coach watches over the whole thing, but the biggest issue that remote athletes have is communication. So if an athlete were to choose to work with a specific specialist, I would recommend it to be on a more technical basis. Unless there's a serious strength and endurance issue, like obviously there's no like one size fits all. But that's the way I went about it. So when I saw my Olympic lifting coaches and my agility coach, it was technical work and it was unloaded. When it was loaded, I would say, to my Olympic lifting coach, GP, say, hey, GP, I'm doing a 1 rep max or a pretty heavy Olympic weightlifting session. Like, can I come over? So there's a lot of responsibility on the athlete to coordinate that so that the athlete asks the right questions and navigates the right way. There's a sense of, and as a head coach, let's say, because CrossFit is so compound and there's always, like, we do a lot of variety, but at the same time in competitive CrossFit, there's not that much variety. So if you're seeing a gymnastics coach that's actually programming sessions for you, but in your conditioning, you're programming other things that can have compounding effects on one another. Like you programmed the Metcon with heavy cleans, but you did strict muscle ups with your gymnastics coach. There's a lot of pressure on the elbow that you're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's muscle ups and it's clean. So the athlete sees that and experiences it and needs to communicate that and needs to make, they need to edit and make executive decisions on their programming based on the best, their best guess, right? So I'm never mad at my athletes if they were working with other coaches and they say, well, I changed this because of that. I'm never going to be upset with them for doing it, for making that, if it makes sense. But and even if it doesn't, they tried it and they recognized there was something wrong with it and they changed it, rather than maybe understanding that could be a problem and moving forward. And like, there's a risk, right? Like if I keep my programming like this, I have a higher risk of injury than if I change it and I don't know what the other risk is because I don't see it maybe. But it's important that the athletes kind of look at at their programming if they're using multiple coaches and make executive decisions and stuff like that, or at least like have a meeting with their coach and tell them like, okay, this is what's planned. So there's a lot of planning involved in that kind of situation.
Now speaking about coaching, continuing that conversation, I want to talk about the new DECA competition team that you've started fairly recently. It was announced not that long ago.
It's been announced, but it's not started yet.
Right, but the announcement came through, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about exactly what that is. But it seems like there's a lot of this starting to pop up, right? Collection of athletes in a particular location, or working with an individual coach, whether that be a Bergeron or through Proven, or the collection of girls that are out in Las Vegas now working together. I'm kind of curious what DECA competition team is to you, and how you kind of envision it being the next kind of iteration of what your coaching is going to look like.
I'm glad we're talking about it, because I know that I've seen it too, that it's been like a real popular thing of like, oh, this athlete has joined our team and this and that. And me and my coaches sat, and I have a great team of coaches. They're fantastic. And we've been wanting to do something different than blog programming for a while. And my vision for this team is to really have it as accessible as I possibly can, without going into any beginner athletes. Like, I don't think it would be a smart decision if someone's been doing CrossFit for 3 months to jump into a competition team. But we should see this competition team much like a triathlon team, where in a triathlon team, you'll have all kinds of athletes. You'll have athletes that are doing it really for fun, and you'll have elite level in a specific triathlon team. So our main objective is to get a collective people that belong to something that is going in a direction. And as coaches, we're using this pool of athletes to do what we do, because we're not, like I told me and my team, we're not content creators. DecaComp is not a content creation company. We love to coach. We're very hands-on. We love to talk to people. We just want people to get better. So how do we do that in a way that's more personal, but that's not like, hey, if you want personalized programming, here's $350 and we'll do it, which is very beneficial, but only a certain, percentage of people can afford that. So we wanted to offer the opportunity for athletes that are, my goal is to be top 10% in the open, or my goal is to make it to the Wodapalooza competition, but to have progression and technical coaching live, to have access to webinars, to have access to elite level athlete perks like rebates with certain partners and stuff like that. So it's really a team of athletes that athletes will apply. Okay. And by apply, I mean athletes will tell us why they want to be a part of this team, what their goals are, how they think that being part of this team can help them achieve their goals, because we need them to be accountable. We don't want them to be like, well, I'm going to do this programming for a little bit and then move forward. This is an investment on their part, and in return, we're going to invest to get them better. So it's also a way for us, once everyone is in this team, and right now this first year is kind of going to be a trial. We're going to do like maybe 30, 40 people, something like that. But then we'll see where we can afford to get more people in. But in this group of people, we want to target athletes that have potential and help them grow faster than if they hadn't had that opportunity. I don't want to do an elitist academy of training. Like, I don't want to fight to get athletes working under DecaComp. I want athletes to feel like they can grow, and they can grow with us for a long time. So for us, it'll be a way to identify athletes that may have the talent to keep progressing. It'll be a way for us to coach athletes in a more organized way. Athletes that they'll follow a program, but if they have, how do you say in English, like a weakness, and they just shoot us, they'll have access to coaches to ask questions and say, hey, this is my weakness, I want to work on this. The coach will be able to provide them with programming to help them in their specific weakness. So, and that's in essence what it is. But what it means to me is just like sport. That's what sport is. Like you were in a gymnastics team, Dave. Like you were an Olympic lifting, team, Chad. Like I was in a water polo team, and we all grew from that. Like everyone was going in the same direction. Everyone was doing the same thing. And together we got stronger as a team. And in CrossFit, I see different brands and companies, but my goal is to have teams of athletes that will find the right team for their values and for what their desires are. And through that, they'll have resources, like real tangible resources to get better or to get exposed to partners, like sponsorships and things like that. And in the long term, like one of my biggest dreams is eventually to have a fund to help support athletes that have potential but that don't have commercial opportunity, like a grant or a hey, like you have a lot of talent, like you qualified for Wodapalooza, like do you have access to financial aid to get there? Like we can provide you with a plane ticket to get there. Like that's where I see this going. So to me, there was a huge gap between the games level athletes and then the the amateur level athletes, and all of those athletes in between, they had barely any help to move forward. So there was so much potential lost, you know? So that's what this team means for me. It's just, I want this, and I want this to work, not like, I want this to work for everybody. I want athletes to get involved. I want athletes to see what this is. And I'm really excited to get to launch it, because my head coach, Andrick, he's just fantastic. I feel bad because no one knows Andrick. Like DecaComp, everyone sees Michele, but no one knows Andrick. But Andrick is like one of the most how do you say, like heartfelt people. Like he just wants to help people. He was supposed to be a gym teacher, and he switched to CrossFit, and like the way he takes people and brings them to where they want to go is just fantastic. I want people to have him. I want people to have him as a coach, you know, because I really feel like he can bring people to a level that they wouldn't think, you know, like Sam Cournoyer, when he used to train under us, Andrick was his coach, you know, for a long time. So I'm very excited about this. Really, it means a lot to us.
I can tell you're excited about
it.
Yeah,
it means a lot. I think it's like, I think it's about time that we start to do things, and it's not as sexy as getting a games athlete, but it's about time that we start to look at the ones who are doing everything they can to get better, but still have a job and still have kids, and you know, they need to be supported.
Sure. And with the popularity of so many, I mean, there have always been kind of weekend comps and things like that, but more established sanctional events where they're bringing in people, you know, many more people that aren't going to look at trying to get at the top of the podium. There is this kind of group of athletes that say, I still want to be competitive. I know I'm not going to go to the games, but I still want to be on a plan that allows me to stay competitive. So it's kind of, you are filling that gap of these, you know, mass group of people that haven't had a place otherwise.
Yeah, it's important to understand that competitive people, even though competition, it's not necessary. Like this project is launched really because I've realized a lot of things in my personal career, like being part of the triathlon team that I was saying, I was like, man, how come we don't have this in CrossFit? Like, I don't want to compete at an elite level in Ironman triathlon, but every week, twice a week, I do a Zwift ride with this group. And if I didn't have that, I would probably not be working out as much as I do now. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be so interested in the process of getting better in this sport. So I don't know, I was like in this club, and I'm like, how come this doesn't exist in CrossFit? And I was like, this is it. This is what's been missing. And this is what we have to provide to all of those people who want to invest, but always say, oh, well, I'm not going to the games athlete, so I'm not important. But that's not true. That's not true. If we expect elite level athletes to inspire the masses, we best be sure to be ready to take that masses and bring them up.
Right.
You know?
I love that. I think it's an amazing idea. And I think, you know, you say it's just starting out, but there are going to be so many people that are going to jump at the opportunity to kind of join a group, right? And then that's one of the great things about CrossFit in general, is that you feel welcome. You feel like the type A personality, and most of us that do CrossFit have an outlet to be able to stay competitive on a daily basis with the just person right next to them or with themselves. Now you're giving the person that wants to actually compete in CrossFit an opportunity as well.
Yeah. But think about how, like you said, Dave, you're a process-driven person. Like, how much did you enjoy going to practice because you had friends there?
Oh, sure. I mean, that was, like, I mean, that's why I always tell everybody too, that, you know, gymnastics is considered an individual sport in terms of how people view it. But the team aspect of gymnastics is why I did the sport. Being a part of team in college, being a part of Team USA, the people that I became training partners with and were on a regular basis in the gym with are my family. They're the people that I'm closest with in this entire world. And so to me, they go hand in hand. You know, it's part of being an athlete.
Of course. Yeah. Good.
So to me, hugely important. Is there anywhere where we can find that right now? Because I know it's just starting out, but where can people find information on that?
The information isn't actually on our website yet, but we are holding a webinar this Thursday. So Thursday, February 25th. I don't know if this is going to be published before then, but there is a webinar online that will be probably available as well after. But any questions can be sent to our email address, info@decacomp.com. And then hopefully by the end of next week, I'll have some information on our website, www.decacomp.com. But yeah, we're really excited. And application / registration won't start until after the Open.
Okay.
I believe after the quarterfinals, so April.
Okay.
So that's going to start. People have time.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Well,
and this won't be out by then, Michele, but I wonder, will you guys be having another webinar at some point that they can potentially get information on through the website? And you said this one may be available beyond that anyway?
Yeah. Most likely we'll be doing another webinar that'll be specific to that, because this webinar, we're doing some open insights and stuff like that. So there'll probably be an information session proper to before it starts.
Okay.
I want to ask you one last thing before we get you out. I'm curious what you and Pat both thought of the recent announcement of Fraser retiring, because I think, just curious from a competitive standpoint, because Pat was right on the heels of Fraser for a number of years, and when you lose out on the rabbit that you're chasing, is there a little bit of kind of like, oh man, like I wanted to beat the best there is, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to beat Fraser in his prime, even though, the road to the podium, top of the podium, is a little bit easier now. Is there still a little bit of like, oh man, I wish he was still competing because I wanted to have the opportunity to actually beat Fraser?
I don't know about the road to the podium being easier. Even if you're really good at CrossFit, it's never easy.
Well, that was quite a roadblock, Fraser, in the way.
Yes. I agree with you. I think like anyone would have been really excited to beat Matt Fraser. I think it was kind of getting annoying at one point. As a coach, I was kind of like, fuck. But I think Pat is, like, knowing how Pat is competitive, I think he was disappointed to hear that, but I really don't think he was surprised. Mm-hmm. Personally, I was surprised at the timing. I thought the timing was a little bit weird, because like we just started the season, and obviously ending your career in a COVID environment is kind of like, it must have been a bummer for Matt for that. But like as a person, I'm really happy for Matt that he's done that. I don't think anyone should live that kind of life for very long. Like, and that's bias, because I like, as much as possible, I love to promote balance. And I understand that being the best in the world has a different kind of balance. But I just figured, like, after 5 years, like, you must be tired. Everybody gets tired. No one can, like, no one in this world can withstand that kind of pressure for that long. And especially, it's not external, it's really internal. Mm-hmm. So I'm very happy that he's made that decision. And it's like, I talked to Matt after he retired, and I told him, like, it's probably going to be the start of the best part of your life, because after giving yourself all that, think about after a really intense workout, the first couple of minutes is really hard, but then how good you feel after, like the sense of satisfaction is just out of this world. And as long as he keeps himself busy, I think that sense of satisfaction of reaping the benefits of all the work he's done over the years, and being able to do the little things that he's neglected for so long, that feeling, kind of like think of when quarantine lifted in your specific areas, and then the feeling of freedom you had for little things like going to see your friends, like, oh my God, when I saw people at the gym for 3 months, they were smiling up to here. I think to a certain degree, we're going to see Matt like that if he lets it happen, but it could take a lot of time. Like, it took me, and I don't consider myself anywhere close to the level of intensity that Matt was, but it took me a good 2-3 years to kind of really come back to the person I was before I started competing in CrossFit. Nutritionally, alcohol wise, like, I know that sounds weird, but like letting myself have alcohol without feeling like I shouldn't, it took a long time. Letting myself having a slice of pizza on a Tuesday night if I wanted to, it took a very long time for me to get there. So hopefully for him it'll be easy, but I have no doubt Matt does everything really intensely. So maybe he's going to go into this balanced lifestyle really intensely.
Right.
But I'm proud. I'm happy for him.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, I think we're all excited to see Pat and the rest of your team compete in this upcoming season. Hopefully it's COVID free in terms of being able to compete in person and getting back to a little bit more of the way we were used to it before the 2020 season. But last minute quick questions from us that we ask all of our guests. First one, nice and easy. What sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Weightlifting.
Damn it.
No hesitation. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
There was not even close.
Everyone thought I was a gymnast, but I never did gymnastics. I actually quit gymnastics after my first day of doing it when I was really young. But sorry. It was the hair. I told my mom, I'm like, I don't like having my hair in a bun.
I'm so excited to hear
that she has her hair
you...
in a bun now, so maybe we have gymnastics in Michelle's future.
Maybe. But I am so excited to hear that you quit gymnastics after day one. I love it. And I am way behind on numbers. I think this is 60 something episodes. I probably have 5 votes for weightlifting, Dave?
Because I help out with picking the guests, so I normally am pretty gymnastics heavy with it. But
so I'm an even bigger fan now, Michelle. So thank you for that. I needed it.
Question number 2, any guests that you think would be great for the podcast? Anybody that you've come across recently, or anybody that you think we would have on that would be good for us?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Paul Tremblay.
Oh, actually,
he's coming.
We have him lined up.
Oh, good. Then great. He's super fun to talk
next
to.
Month. Excellent.
Yes.
I'd like to talk to Pat as well.
Yeah, Pat. Yeah, I can just shoot him a message. I know I'm in good terms with Pat. He's fun to talk to.
Absolutely.
He's good to talk to. Yeah.
And he's a former gymnast, so we'll.
Maybe not then. Maybe not then. But no, I remember working with both of those guys at Reebok as well, and cool guys for sure. I'm looking forward to.
And Paul was part of our Power Monkey Camp staff too.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got to get him back out there.
Oh, all
right. Well, last few minute questions here. Any book that you've come across here recently that you highly recommend?
Oh, that's a really good. Oh man, I go through a lot of audiobooks. I was currently reading the human body. I can't remember. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to send it over to you. But it's a book about the body. It's like the human body, a user's guide, and it basically explains different systems of the human body in the most practical and straightforward kind of way. Right. And I was just like I wasn't even done half of it, and I was like, oh my God, this is a fantastic book, and I unfortunately forgot it somewhere, but I'll send you over the actual title and the author. It's a fantastic book.
That sounds awesome. That sounds very interesting. And to be able to put it in simple words and simple terms where everybody can relate to it and actually use the information, right?
It's insane. It's useless information, completely useless. Some of the stuff in there is like, you're never going to do anything with it, but it's so nice to know,
Sure. Absolutely. Well, you talked to us a little bit about the new DECA comp team. So we're looking forward to that coming out. Hopefully our listeners will go check that out as well. Be a part of it if it's something that fits your life. But do you have any other parting words for our listeners?
Keep learning. I'd say if you're a coach, keep learning. If you're an athlete, keep learning. Stay hungry, because if there's anything we're meant to do on this planet is to learn, to live better and to get better. So stay informed, be open-minded, and don't be afraid of debate. Don't be afraid of things that don't necessarily reflect your values, but at the same time, stand your ground. So be a balanced human being and enjoy your life.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate those words. And Michelle, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. It's been too long. We can't go that long without talking to you again. Hopefully we can get you and some of your coaches out to Power Monkey Camp at some point when everything changes. That'd be incredible. But to our listeners out there, guys, as always, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.